How do I improve heavy clay soil in the garden? Top methods that actually work, right here in the Soil Science Garden. If you garden on heavy clay, you already know the struggle. In the rainy season, it turns into sticky mud that clings to your boots and suffocates roots. And then, in the dry season, it hardens like concrete and cracks open. Seeds struggle to emerge, roots can't breathe, and even simple digging feels like a workout. But here's the truth. I want every gardener on the Soil Science Garden to understand clay soil isn't bad soil. In fact, it's naturally rich in nutrients and has excellent water-holding capacity. The real challenge isn't fertility, it's structure. When you improve the structure, clay transforms from a problem into one of the most productive soils you can grow in. Let's walk through the most effective science-backed methods to turn heavy clay into loose, living, fertile garden soil. These are practical strategies I've seen work again and again, whether you're just starting out or refining a mature garden. First, understand the clay advantage. Before we fix clay, we need to respect it. Clay particles are extremely small and tightly packed. This is why water drains slowly and air movement is limited. Roots need both oxygen and space to grow, so when clay compacts, plants struggle. But clay also holds on to nutrients better than sandy soils. Once you improve aeration and aggregation, the way soil particles clump into stable crumbs, you create a soil that feeds plants for the long term. Think of this process not as fixing bad soil, but as unlocking the potential that's already there. Improving clay is a gradual process. There is no overnight solution, but the changes you make today will keep improving your soil year after year. If you remember only one thing from this guide, let it be this: organic matter is the cure for heavy clay. Compost, aged manure, leaf mold, and other decomposed organic materials work like a natural conditioner. They separate clay particles, create air spaces, improve drainage, and feed the microbial life that builds stable soil structure. Spread a thick layer, at least 5 to 8 centimeters, or about 2 to 3 inches, over your garden beds and gently mix it into the topsoil if possible. If digging isn't practical, just add the compost on top and let earthworms and microbes do the work for you. Over time, this top-dressing method can really transform even the heaviest soil. The key is consistency. One application helps. Repeating it every season changes everything. Nature has its own way of loosening compacted soil roots. Cover crops like daikon radish, clover, oats, rye, or vetch send roots deep into clay, creating channels for air and water. Some, like tillage radish, act like biological drills, breaking through dense layers. When these plants decompose, they leave behind organic matter and natural pore spaces. Plant cover crops during the off-season or between main crops. Instead of removing them, cut them at soil level and leave the roots in place. This method builds structure without disturbing the soil ecosystem. For gardeners who want long-term improvement with minimal labor, cover cropping is honestly one of the smartest strategies available. This is one of the most common mistakes gardeners make. Working clay soil when it's wet destroys its structure and leads to severe compaction. If you squeeze a handful of soil and it forms a sticky ribbon or shiny clump, it's just too wet to dig. Wait until it crumbles easily in your hand. Yes, patience really does matter here. One session of digging wet clay can undo months of soil improvement. Think of it this way. Good soil structure is fragile when wet and resilient when moist, not saturated. Mulch, your soil's protective shield. Mulching is honestly one of the simplest ways to improve clay over time. Organic mulches like straw, shredded leaves, grass clippings, or even wood chips, they protect the soil surface from compaction caused by rain and foot traffic. And as that mulch breaks down, it feeds the soil with organic matter and encourages earthworms and all those beneficial microbes. These little organisms, they mix organic material into the clay and create tunnels that improve drainage and aeration. Just keep a 5 to 10 centimeter layer of mulch on your beds year-round. In a clay garden, bare soil is really a missed opportunity. Raised beds, a fast track to better growing conditions. If your clay is extremely dense or poorly drained, raised beds can give you, well, immediate results. By building beds above ground and filling them with a blend of compost, topsoil, and organic matter, you create a loose, well-draining root zone, while the native clay improves slowly underneath. Over time, roots, worms, and microbes connect the raised soil with the native soil below. Raised beds don't eliminate clay, but they do give you control and allow you to grow successfully while your long-term soil improvement continues. Avoid adding sand. Here's why. One of the most persistent gardening myths is that adding sand will loosen clay, but in reality, small amounts of sand mixed with clay often create a dense, cement-like material. To really change clay texture with sand, you'd need massive quantities, far more than most gardeners can realistically apply. Instead, organic matter is the safer, more effective, and more sustainable solution. If you remember this from the soil science garden, compost beats sand every time. Encourage earthworms and soil life. Healthy soil is alive, and earthworms are some of the best partners you can have in a clay garden. Their burrows improve drainage, their castings enrich fertility, and their constant movement mixes organic matter into the soil. To attract earthworms, keep the soil moist but not waterlogged, add organic matter regularly, and avoid excessive chemical fertilizers or pesticides. Mulching and composting naturally create the environment worms love. When you start seeing worm activity increase, you know your soil is moving in the right direction. So, let's talk about improving drainage without overdigging. If water pools in your garden after a rain, well, the issue might be surface drainage, not just the soil texture itself. Gentle grading, shallow channels, or even planting beds a little above the surrounding ground can really help excess water move away. Deep, aggressive digging or repeated rototilling might seem helpful at first, but honestly, frequent disturbance breaks down soil structure and actually speeds up compaction over time. In clay soils, less disturbance, along with organic inputs, usually gives you better long-term results. Think about building structure, not breaking it down. Now, about gypsum, when it helps and when it doesn't. Gypsum is sometimes recommended for clay soils because it can help separate particles in certain situations, especially if your soil has high sodium levels. But for most home gardens, its impact is pretty limited, unless a soil test actually shows a sodium problem. If your soil isn't sodic, gypsum alone won't fix compaction. Organic matter and biological activity are still the most reliable solutions. A simple soil test can save you a lot of time and help you decide whether gypsum is worth trying in your garden. Choose plants that thrive while you improve the soil. While you're working on building better structure, it's best to work with your soil rather than against it. There are plenty of plants that tolerate, or even prefer, heavier soils. Perennials, fruit trees, brassicas, squash, and lots of native plants adapt really well to clay. Deep-rooted species like sunflowers or comfrey can also help open up the soil naturally. And as your soil gets better year by year, you'll notice that a wider range of crops becomes easier to grow. Now be patient. Improving clay is a long game. The biggest transformation doesn't come from just one treatment. It comes from repetition and time. Each layer of compost, every season of cover crops, each year of mulching adds to the soil's structure and biological life. After a year, you'll notice digging gets easier. After 2 or 3 seasons, drainage improves and plant growth becomes more vigorous. After several years, your soil develops that crumbly, dark, living texture every gardener dreams about. Clay really does reward persistence. Here's a simple seasonal strategy for success. In spring, add compost and avoid working the soil when it's wet. During the growing season, keep your beds mulched and try to minimize foot traffic. In fall, plant cover crops or add another layer of organic matter. And in winter, let soil life work undisturbed. Just repeat this cycle every year, and the improvement really starts to add up. Now the real secret: build soil, don't fight it. The gardeners who succeed with clay aren't the ones who try to force it into behaving like sandy soil. They're the ones who build organic matter, protect the surface, encourage biology, and give the soil time to change. When you shift your mindset from fixing clay to feeding soil life, everything gets easier and a whole lot more sustainable. That's the philosophy behind the soil science garden. Healthy soil first, thriving plants second. Final thoughts. Heavy clay soil can feel like a limitation, but honestly, it's actually an opportunity. With the right approach, clay becomes a moisture-retentive, nutrient-rich foundation that supports strong, resilient plants, even through dry spells. Add organic matter consistently. Keep the soil covered. Grow roots year-round. Avoid working it when wet. Encourage soil life. Stay patient. If you do these things, your clay won't just improve, it'll become one of the greatest assets in your garden. If this guide helped you see your soil a little differently, you're exactly the kind of gardener this channel is for. Subscribe to the Soil Science Garden for more practical, science-based tips that turn ordinary soil into living, productive ground. And if you know someone struggling with heavy clay, go ahead and share this with them, because better soil grows better gardens, and better gardens grow stronger communities.